Hey, welcome back. I'm Michael Geisen, your lovely host, and the most celebrated instructional guide of our species. And I'm going to tell you how our species came to take over the world. It's pretty clear that humans have been one of the most successful, competitive, and dominant species on Earth, at least in recent times. But it's certainly not because of our speed, strength, or our fierceness. At least not because of yours. Yeah! We're dominant for one reason. We got smart. But it wasn't enough just to be smart. You still needed to be fast enough and strong enough to catch your dinner. Back in those days on the African savannah, when I was a kid, dinner wasn't, come and get it. It was, go and kill it. So how could a relatively weak, slow little creature like me take down prey that's big and fast? I had to get bigger and faster, of course. And what's the easiest way to double or triple your size and speed? Add people together. Cooperation. Humans' ability to cooperate and communicate led to things like agriculture, city-states, and eventually pro football.
1st and 10.
But we don't tackle animals anymore. We tackle work projects, school projects, and we tackle the other team on the football field, of course. Humans are both cooperative and competitive. And both of these, cooperation and competitiveness, are critical to our success in all sorts of ways and throughout our lives. In the real world of work, family, civic life, we rarely get to work in isolation. Life is a series of group projects. The problem is, most of us aren't really all that good at it. So, let's see where we're going in this session on group work. First of all, we're going to figure out how to structure groups to utilize everyone's strength. Secondly, we're going to communicate tactfully. And third, learn how to reach compromise and consensus. You know, the difficulty with group work is that you've got to give up a little piece of yourself in order to make the group really work. But man, when groups work, they really work. An effective team really complements each other's strengths and weaknesses. It's kind of like a basketball team. Not everybody has the same skills, but you complement and play off of each other. It works incredibly well. The key to making a team truly work is this: value everybody for what they can bring to the table, and put the needs of the group ahead of your own needs. Now, this sounds all well and good, but we know that it's tough in the real world of real people. Somebody in your group is going to be annoying, controlling, lazy, screwing around. Maybe nobody wants to lead, or maybe too many people want to lead. But here's the deal: you still got to make it work. So, whether you're an outgoing person or you're more reserved, it doesn't matter. The success of the group depends on you to lead it. And a good leader knows what each team member's strengths are, including himself or herself. They also know how to divide up a big job into several smaller jobs so they can be assigned to different team members according to their strengths. You got to figure out what job's right for each team member. And that's it. The group doesn't work for the leader. A good leader actually works for the group. But how do you make this work in the real world? I mean, get practical, Mr. G. What do I do when my group's all over the place? Well, probably the simplest thing to do is to divide up the work and create jobs or roles. So imagine you're in a lab group in science class. You're trying to develop an experiment to determine how the steepness of a ramp might affect the acceleration of a small car. Well, first just make a quick list of all the different jobs there are. In this lab, jobs might include things like the equipment manager, maybe a technology specialist, the data recorder, and then the person who's actually doing the driving of the car. Each person has a distinct role, and therefore each person is needed by the rest of the team. All right, in order to help you see how this works, I'm going to introduce you to a few of my students. The first one I'm going to call Brady. It's not his real name, but we've got to protect the innocent. Wouldn't it be great if your name was surrounded by quotes like this? All right, here's Brady. Brady is a walking storehouse of facts. I think most of them he picked up from watching Mythbusters or nature shows on TV. But man, he knows so much stuff. Every day he would come in with new and crazy out there facts. The problem was, that's all it was. It was just a pile of facts. Kind of like a big pile of leaves, actually. That's all it was, just a pile. Owen, on the other hand, Owen also had a pretty good pile of facts in his head, but his strength was actually really in analyzing those facts and kind of pulling things apart and seeing how they worked. He had a mathematical kind of brain, and he was really good at playing strategy games, and actually he did quite well in school. Until it was time to design a project and build it. We had an electric creation night, and poor Owen, he couldn't think of an idea that was original. And when he finally got something, he had a hard time actually making it work and putting it together into the real world. He, poor guy, broke down in tears because he couldn't get it to work. Our third student I want to introduce you to is Adam. Adam, on the other hand, he actually had an incredible grasp on the real world. He could get things done. In fact, my students would say, man, you can really get her done. Adam had no problem making things happen. He could build stuff, he could arrange stuff, he could design things. The problem was he couldn't really remember the facts very well, and he wasn't very good about analyzing things either. And so he had a hard time in school. His poor grades, unfortunately, kind of reflected how he learned. Fourth and final student I'll introduce you to is Ariana. Ariana was a bit more out there. She would kind of float around a little bit more in her mind. Her contributions to class, though, were so creative and out there, and some of the questions she came up with were unbelievable. She had a very, very creative and sort of interesting, intriguing kind of a mind. But it wasn't real rooted in the real world. She liked to doodle a lot, but sometimes she just got off in her own little world and never really quite came back. Now, as different as these four students were from each other, they had one thing in common. They developed their intelligence in mostly one way. They're a little bit like our 7 intelligence characters, the 7 multiple intelligence characters from session 1, kind of one-dimensional. The problem is that minds that stay unbalanced like this rarely succeed in the real world, especially by themselves. But put the 4 of them together, and pretty cool things happen. I'm going to give you a visual of what I mean using an amazing tool that I developed called the Diamond Geisometer, named after me, Michael Geisen, National Teacher of the Year. This is the amazing Diamond Geisometer. Let's see how it works. It's a way of looking at different ways of approaching the world. It's a bit like Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. And using this, I think, will help us understand how different minds can make an incredible group project. Let's take a look. The first way of relating to the world is very factual. This is all about the details. This is about remembering things like dates or grammar or math facts, just the facts about life. This is what our good buddy Brady was incredibly good at. Not very good at analyzing things or creating or being very practical, but very good with the facts. Thanks, Brady. Next up is analytical knowledge. Analytical skill is basically being able to take things and pick them apart, to be able to analyze them and break them into pieces. It could be mathematical, but it can also be things like analyzing poetry or analyzing music or literature. Analysis was what our good buddy Owen was really good at. Again, when it came time to create something or get it done on the ground, he had a hard time with that. And so he didn't do too well at that project. Poor guy. Next up is practical. Practical is not just the ability to just build things or make things with your hands, but it could also be a very social practicality. The idea that you can maybe organize an event or rally people around a cause. So practical is really just about street smarts and being able to get things done in the real world. In our case, this was Adam. Adam could get her done. Finally, there's a very creative side to intelligence. Now, creativity isn't all just about can you draw pictures and make music, although that could be part of it. We'll get more into about how creative thinking works in a later session. But creativity really is about a lot of different things. You can be creative in math, you can be creative in the way you approach science, but you can also be creative in more traditional things that we think of, like arts and music as well. In our case, Ariana was a very creative mind. Not as solid on the practical or factual things, but man, she could really think of some amazing things. Now, everyone contributes his or her strength to the good of the team, but only if they're a team. So what happens when you put them all together? You end up with what I would call group intelligence. In other words, you have all of these things in your group. Even though it may seem like it's going to be tough to work together, it's worth it because now you have completely filled out the diamond geisometer. Everyone contributes his or her strengths for the good of the team, and the final product is way better because of it. If you're working on a longer-term group project, there are a few more things you need to keep track of. First off, make a handy table that you can make copies of or post on an online wiki with your information on it. So, for instance, contact information is definitely something to go on there. Write down the names, phone numbers, emails, instant message names, astrological signs, whatever else you need to know about each team member so you can get a hold of them. There's nothing worse than not being able to get a hold of someone over the weekend when you really need to. Secondly, write down exactly what each person's going to be doing. Be specific about it so there's no confusion, and include the deadline for each person's part of the project. So if one team member is doing research needed by another team member to do the writing, you need to have an intermediate deadline for the research person. If another team member is putting together a poster, presentation, or a website, they're going to need the materials well before the final due date. Finally, plan to be finished well before the final due date with the whole thing so you can deal with unexpected circumstances. Sometimes people get sick or things get lost or people just flake out. So give yourselves a cushion so things don't get ugly at the last minute. Now make sure each person has a hard copy of this organizational table so there's a record of who's doing what and so there's no problem getting a hold of each other. When each person has a specific job they're responsible for, it creates a little interdependency within the team, and therefore teamwork starts to build naturally. If the job isn't being done, there's no need to blame anyone. Simply appeal to each individual's clearly defined responsibility. If that doesn't work, call in the cops. Actually, cops aren't necessary, because just about everything you need to know about how to get along in a group, you learned in kindergarten. So what do you do when someone isn't pulling their weight? Or you got two people that want to do the same job, or there's a disagreement in your group? Well, really it comes down to just basic communication. You know, communication can have an enormous impact on how well a group functions. You don't want to be too abrasive and in your face. That doesn't work very well. But on the other hand, you don't want to be too passive and just get walked all over either. It's not good for you or for anybody else or for the group as a whole. So how do you kind of hang out in the middle there, in that place between Aggressoland and Meek City? It's a wonderful place, actually, called Assertiveville. And its residents have a quality called tact. Tact is the ability to be straightforward, but not be so straightforward. It's the ability to handle delicate situations with a bit of sensitivity, a little thoughtfulness, a little consideration of other people. People with tact aren't just in your face, but they're not also getting trampled underfoot either. They just assertively say what needs to be said without being offensive. They have better relationships, more success, and they're a lot better liked because of that. Hey, this sounds great, Mr. G. How do I sign up, you ask? Well, first of all, it really takes a certain attitude toward people that says, you know, you and I, we might be really different, but we're all human beings. In other words, people aren't just objects to use in order to get our way. It also requires you to care enough about the outcome of a group to not let important things pass without saying anything. So a tactful person has to have a lot of respect for the people involved, but also a commitment to getting the work done. Being tactful requires a bit of planning ahead and also a little bit of practice. Try it. All right, let's try it. We're going to start simple. I'll give you what your brain is thinking, completely unfiltered. You think about how it would affect someone if you said it to him or her like that, without filtering it. And then put it into more considerate and more tactful language. Here we go. Your brain notices an incessant tapping noise coming from behind you. A boy in your class that you don't know very well is tapping his pencil on his desk out of habit and nervous energy, of course. Your instinct says, choke the kid. What's the proper response? In this case, his behaviors are annoying to you and probably to everybody else too, so not saying anything is simply going to drive a wedge between him and everybody else in the class. So passively sitting there doing nothing is only going to make it worse. So what do you say though? I want you to take a moment to formulate your tactful response. All right, hopefully your tactful response was not just, dude, shut up. Hopefully you came up with something a little better with maybe something like this. Whispering maybe, Paul, you've got some great rhythm there, buddy. But sometimes people find tapping noises to be a little distracting. So I think you could tap on your leg or somewhere quieter. Let's take a look at that response and break it down. First off, you said his name, Paul, because people like to hear their names when you're talking to them. It's better than, hey, kid. And it shows him that you value them as a person. Secondly, you whispered it to him privately, because public confrontations can cause a little bit more of a defensive attitude. Next, you started with a compliment or something that you actually like about him. And then you soften the language with words like sometimes and a bit, which kind of helps ease the blow. Next up, if you noticed, I said people and referred to tapping noises without saying, I think what you do is annoying. Even though you both know you're talking about him and you, saying it in the third person puts it in more general terms, so you're not attacking him directly as a person. You're just letting him know that most people don't like that action, no matter who's doing it. Then you've given him some suggestions to make the situation better. You've acknowledged the fact that he's kind of a dude that just needs to move, but, tap somewhere quietly, and that works too. Finally, you said thanks, which never goes out of style. People appreciate that, no matter who they are. All right, let's try one more. This time, small group setting. You've been placed into groups of 4 and given a complex math story problem to solve. It's an involved process. It's going to take at least 10 or 15 minutes, and you have to report your results to the class at the end of it. Andrea is completely dominating your group. She's bossing people around. She's not letting anybody else contribute ideas. She's not really doing much actual work herself. So the question is, should you assert yourself? I think the answer is yes. Pretty straightforward. Don't allow people to walk all over you. Don't allow them to walk all over your peers. But how you present yourself to her is going to determine whether this group is going to be successful or not. It's also going to determine the relationship that you're going to have with her in this class and in all your other classes as well. So take a few moments, right now in fact, to formulate what would you say to Andrea in this situation. All right, take a few moments and just think about it. What would you say? All right, let's see how you did. So using the tips from our first example, did you say her name, Andrea? Did you talk to her privately instead of calling her out in front of the whole group? It's not always possible, but it can help sometimes. Did you lead with a compliment or something that you liked about her? Did you soften your language with words like kind of, or sometimes, or occasionally? Did you try to keep things in the third person instead of attacking them directly? In other words, saying things like, people tend to, or when other people, instead of you, bug me. Did you give Andrea a couple of positive suggestions for how the rest of the group would like her to behave? And then finally, did you thank her for listening to you and considering a change? So what does it all look like if you put it all together? So maybe something like this. Hey, Andrea, can I talk with you for a minute, just privately? I really appreciate your enthusiasm and your willingness to lead our group. I think people are feeling a little frustrated though, and someone tends to dominate the group process. Groups need a lot of leadership, that's good, but it usually works best for a leader to share responsibility and allow everybody else to contribute too. Is that something we can try? Thanks. All right, it's not a magic formula, and it might feel a little awkward the first few times you use that kind of an approach, but these are good guidelines, and they're going to help you get along with others in your group without coming across as either being too harsh and in your face, or just as bad, allowing yourself to be trodden upon. No one deserves to be silently compacted by the boot of another. So rise up, but not with an attack. Use tact. When we were kids, a lot of times other people solved our problems for us, like our parents or our teacher. But as you get older and more mature, you've got to start to have those solutions come from within. Let me tell a little story. A while back, my 2 young children, they were arguing over the last banana. This is my banana. No, mine. 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 Finally, I said, hey, it's time to assert my dadliness. I'm cutting the banana in half. So I cut the banana, gave them each 1/2. Off they went. Later on, to my surprise, I found half of a banana peel in the compost bin, which I expected. That's where a banana peel goes. But I also saw half of the banana itself. What? Why didn't somebody eat their half? And where was the other half of the banana peel? So I called the kids back together and I said, hey, what's going on? My son, Aspen, he says, I ate my half of the banana and then I threw the banana peel in the compost bin. Duh. My daughter, Johanna, she says, well, I wasn't hungry. I just wanted the banana peel to soothe some of my itchy skin where I have bug bites. I was also hoping to polish my leather shoes too, for which banana peels actually do work, Dad. And I was hoping even to have enough banana peel left over for comic relief purposes. But I only had a half. Now, there were a few different possible outcomes to this classic story. The worst outcome for both of them would be if I had just confiscated the banana and no one got their way. This would be a lose-lose scenario for both Aspen and Johanna. Not good. A second outcome could be that one of the children dominated the situation and took the whole banana, leaving nothing for the other one. This is a win-lose scenario. And while one person is really happy, the other one isn't, which means their relationship is going to disintegrate and eventually fall apart. In the long run, a solution based on control or domination is inferior for both parties involved because it really just destroys the friendship. It destroys trust. It destroys goodwill. Even if one person willingly says, oh, go ahead, you take the banana, I don't mind. That person usually does actually mind, and one person wins and the other person loses. Even if in the short term they seem to be okay with it, in the long run, it's not a good situation. A third outcome was the one that I used, compromise, right? They each get half the banana. But in this case, it's a little better than win-lose, but it's really only half win, half lose. We only each get half of what we want. It's not bad, mind you, and if everybody could simply get to this step instead of simple control or domination over the situation, we'd be a lot better off. It's a great start. Sharing really can work wonders. But sometimes we can find an optimal way to share. Let's put it in a school situation to make it a little more clear. Let's say that Allison wants to choose the topic of nuclear energy and make a video about it, while Jamal wants to do hydroelectric energy and do a presentation about it, and they're partners. What should they do? Well, it turns out that Allison's mostly interested in doing the video and only kind of partly on nuclear energy. Jamal, on the other hand, is really interested in doing hydropower and not really concerned about the format. He doesn't really care that much. So in this case, both students will be well satisfied if they do a video on hydroelectric. Now, how did they know what they were each most concerned about? They asked each other. They communicated. Now, there's a fourth outcome, of course, to the banana problem that's even more ideal, and it's just like the situation I just described. It's a win-win scenario where each person gets what they want with no hard feelings. In this story, Aspen could have enjoyed eating the whole banana, while Johanna could have used the entire peel. What did they need to do to make this happen? Again, they just needed to communicate. They needed to just really listen to each other's needs, figure out a way to make it all work together. So, in class, for instance, two students partnered up. They both want to do the design for the poster for their group project. One really only wants to do the lettering and the layout, while the other wants to do the artwork. Banana? Banana peel. Two happy teammates and a better poster. How about two students that both want to be the timer in a science experiment? Well, why not both time the experiment and take the average? Two happy teammates and a more accurate result. Now, these are all pretty simple examples, but they can be a good model of how to start working together in a group. What it really comes down to is good communication and a willingness to compromise a little bit for the good of the team. Now, what happens though when there are more people and more ideas? How can we come to a consensus without simply voting and having a winner and loser? Let's check out some of these different techniques. A group of students is trying to decide on the topic and format of their French project, which is to teach the rest of the class vocabulary about a certain aspect of French life. They've got some ideas and now they need to come to a consensus on which topic to do and how to present it. So they made a list of what they have. They've got a few options for topics, and as you can see, they've got a few options for different presentation formats. They've decided to take a simple vote to figure out which ones they should do. Here's the results. As you can see, as far as topics go, they're tied between shopping and sports. For the presentation format though, they've got two people wanting to do a skit, one video and one for poster. So, they're going to do a skit, but they're stuck in a tie about the topic. Meanwhile, Paula, who voted for the poster, is pretty upset about doing a skit because she hates being in front of people. and everybody else wants to do either a skit or video. Then there's VJ, who wants to make a video because he really wants to use his skills and equipment to produce something cool that they can show in class and also post online. How are they going to solve these problems? How are they going to make everybody happy? Well, one possible solution is dot voting. Each student gets, say, 6 dot stickers to vote with. Or you can just use a pen if you don't have stickers like this. This gives each person enough votes to put 2 on their first choice in each column and 1 on their second choice. Or if they don't care as much about the topic as the presentation format, they can put more dots on that one. Each person can arrange their dots however you want. You can distribute your votes any way you'd like. Let's see how this came out for this group. All right, as you can see, sports got 5 dots, so obviously that's going to be the topic. Samantha used 4 of her 6 dots to vote for sports because she felt really strongly about that. She definitely wanted to do that. Nobody else was all that concerned about the topic, so the tie that we had before was broken pretty easily. The other 3 students were more concerned about the presentation format, so dot voting solved that problem pretty easily. The format's still a little bit up in the air though, and even though video edged out skit, Paula is still going to feel a little bit slighted either way, because she used all of her dots for shopping, poster, and game. VJ, he used 5 of his 6 dots to vote for video, because he really wanted to do that. He says, hey, the results are in, man. They clearly show we got to do a video. Samantha, at this point, announces she's going to be out of town for the weekend for a soccer tournament, so a video's out of the question for her. She says, hey, a skit would be easiest. Greg, he's fine with that because he just likes to act. Meanwhile, Paula is withdrawn completely from the conversation, figuring that, again, she's just going to have to go along with what her group decides without her. She hates group work. But then, easygoing Greg comes up with a solution. Hey, what if we do a video? That might allow everybody to be happy if they each take a particular job. Samantha could do the prep work and research the vocabulary and write the script, since she's going to be gone this weekend and won't be able to help make the video. And Greg says, yeah, I can help her with that a little bit, no problem. Paula, who doesn't like to be in front of the camera, can be the one behind the camera. And then she can use her artistic abilities to frame the shots and work on the lighting and stuff. She can do any graphics they need for the video also. Solves her problem. VJ and Greg, they can do the acting because they both like to ham it up and express themselves. And then VJ can use his sweet video editing skills to put the whole thing together. Everyone has a specific job, timeline, and is satisfied with the overall plan. The reason this worked is because they each communicated their wishes effectively. They told each other what they were passionate about and what they didn't care as much about, and then they listened to each other. They were able to use the whole banana. There's another similar technique you can use. It's called weighted voting. Each person ranks their choices from, say, 1 through 6, and then you simply add up the points. Whichever choice has the least amount of points is the one that's probably your best bet. It's kind of like golf. The low score wins. Now, the winning choice isn't necessarily the best one, though, because you need to consider how it affects everyone in the group. If you can't find a way for everybody to have a role that they're comfortable with, perhaps the second place finisher might work the best. In this case, you really have to look at the data and figure out which one makes the most sense. Which one's not going to alienate a group member just to get somebody else's way. Because if you do, you're going to pay for it in the long run because of that broken relationship. Plus, it's just not the kind thing to do. Remember tact. You want to respect both the people and the outcome of your project. Try to maximize happiness and success at the same time. There's a couple other methods that you can be pretty effective too, especially when any of the modified voting systems don't come up with a solution. There's a method I call I can live with these, or ICLWT, Ichelwut.
Crazy acronym man!
Which simply has each team member list the choices that they can live with. So each person has to choose at least 2 or 3 options, and any option that all group members have listed will at least be agreeable to everybody. If not necessarily their first choice, at least they can live with it. Sometimes you can use another technique called I narrow, you choose, where one group member narrows down the list of choices to his top 3, and then the other group member gets to choose any of those 3. So one person narrows it down to 3, the next person chooses the final, what it's going to be. This plan works really well with smaller groups or if it's just two people within a larger group who just can't decide and they're in an argument situation. In any of these situations, though, remember, you're dealing with human beings. And effective communication is what ultimately is going to keep your group happy and working successfully together. All right, let's wrap it up and bring it home. More people equals more brains, more energy, and more strength. Cooperation is what helped humans thrive on Earth. It's what you need every day of your life, and it'll help you thrive in school too. Cooperative group is a powerful thing. The good news is we learned all this stuff in kindergarten. Share, be kind, have fun. You can move it beyond kindergarten, and here's how. First, structure your group for success. Set up the roles early and make sure everybody knows exactly what's expected of them and when. Secondly, don't be extreme in your communication, either too passive or too aggressive. You want to communicate with tact. And third, be willing to compromise a little bit, but also look for ways that everyone can come out happy. Reach a consensus before moving forward. Finally, keep in mind the words of the great philosopher Plato. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. You don't know what your team members are going through in their own lives. Some of them might have extremely difficult home lives, learning disabilities, social pressures, or other things that you just don't know about. Everyone's fighting a hard battle, so let's not make it any harder. Be kind. All right, in our next session, I'm going to help you get organized and prioritize your time. I'm also going to demonstrate how to instantly lower your IQ by 10 points, how to say, "Oh, you poor baby," in sign language, and reveal why I secretly hoped for the destruction of the world. See you next time.